to How to Master Midlife. 5 keys to help you get unstuck on purpose and growing in joy and impact. I'm Erin Kirk. For those of you I haven't met before, I'm happy that you can join us today. And the reason I'm doing this little pop-up training, I just decided yesterday, basically to do it, is that we're always growing and evolving and changing here. And right now, it feels really critical to me that we are spending as much time as possible talking about and preparing ourselves and engaging in joy. Life's a little crazy now. It's a little bit scary. And if you happen to be in midlife, it can be amplified, right? Because there's such a big transition, which we're going to talk about, but also there's just a lot of stuff going on in the world that doesn't feel very joyful, it feels scary. It feels a lot. It's hard to know where you put your energy. And so one of the things that we're involving in around here is this, how to bring joy to our process. And frankly, the whole reason you would get on purpose anyway at midlife or any other time is because we want to feel joy. We want to have, lives that feel good. So that's what we're going to talk about today. How to master midlife, 5 keys to get you unstuck on purpose and growing in joy and impact. So allow me to also just double check quickly that everybody who wants to be here is here, because we do have to let people in. So hold on one second. Okay, that looks good to me. Let me just hide this. So let's talk about for a second who this is for. This training today is really for women who got kind of surprised by midlife and feel a little lost or anxious or stuck. It's also for women who need some help with a big identity shift, like divorce or empty nest or career change or burnout even. It's for high achievers who are ready to build some legacy and impact, even if they aren't sure what or how. And it's also for women who are tired of pleasing and avoiding and tiptoeing and faking, who want to get real about their lives and start building a happy second half. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to show you a couple things. First of all, I'm going to show you, if you're in midlife, why you're not crazy, even though you might feel like you are, and why midlife is a natural time to grow into something new. I'm also going to show you how to stop looking for a magic pill to fix your midlife malaise and what you can do instead. I'm also going to show you why you're never going to get over fear of failure, unworthiness, and rejection as much as you will feel, understand, and utilize it. I'll also show you how critical a good mindset is during your midlife shift, but why it's only one of 4 critical pieces. I'll also show you how our framework helps our clients get unstuck and on purpose and back into joy so they can impact the world around them, and how our culture's love of privacy and individualism is killing us and what we need now more than ever. So my promise to you is to show you 5 smart strategies for getting unstuck on purpose, back into joy at midlife, or really anytime. So, but first of all, does this sound like you? Are you feeling kind of bored or anxious, or maybe like you're wasting your time? Have you lost your passion and begun maybe rationalizing why that's okay, why it's not a super big deal to you? Are you secretly jealous of women who are doing things that you're dreaming of doing? And do you miss the feeling of joy, progress, and service to other people? Also, are you lonely, even if you're surrounded by people all the time? Are you sick of going through the motions, knowing that you're maybe wasting your potential? Or are you sitting on some kind of big ambition, but you're scared to action it? Are you afraid that this is it? Like that nothing is ever going to change? Like it's just, this is as good as it gets. I love her face right there. If she could speak, she would say, none of that's your problem. The real problem is nobody is talking in an intelligent way about what is actually happening to people at midlife. And certainly, I don't know that many people think about it as much as I do. And so I have discovered 5 really important keys, if you will, to mastering midlife. And that's what I want to share with you guys. And here's what's going to happen. Like as you begin to master this midlife shift, you kind of stop pleasing and stop performing and get honest about what you really want from the rest of your life. You take 100% responsibility for where you're at and everything that's going on, and you start dreaming again. Also, you set higher standards and abide by a daily plan of action, even when you don't feel like it. Maybe even begin to trust that you do have an important purpose and you start acting on it. You also might drop the excuses and do what you must to get healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And you become the light, an inspiration for your kids, your family, and other women. Of course, I'm Erin, and this is that moment where I'm going to double check and just see if anybody else wants in. Okay, we're good. So I'm Erin. I am a professional certified life coach, and I've got about 2,000 hours in my coaching practice now. Been at this for, 4 years, working with women in midlife. I'm also an energy leadership master practitioner. I'm a writer and a world traveler, and I host women's retreats in US and Europe. And the stuff I'm going to talk to you about today is stuff that I did not know when I hit my own midlife dip. And it's been a bit of a process for me because I hit it about age 37. We had just moved to Texas, and I kind of got to the end of my rope, and I was like, what the heck am I doing? What is my life for? I'm pretty sure I've got a purpose here, but I'm definitely not doing it. And this doesn't feel very good. And I got really fearful and depressed and anxious, and I was lonely and frustrated because I would start stuff and then stop it and, make up these big stories in my head about how I always quit things. And I never complete anything that I start. Well, that was over 10 years ago. And I've done a lot of stuff since then. I figured a lot of things out. And so my intent is to shortcut this for you a bit, but I do still want to say it is a process. Mastering midlife is a process, but here's some ways you can get started. So the first thing I need you to know, this is so important. If you don't take anything else out of this training, this is critically important. So the first midlife key is that midlife shift is normal, and you are normal. So you might feel terrible, like physically, emotionally, mentally, but there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken, and nor are you alone. You're going through a natural phase of human development that's a lot like adolescence. The crazy thing is that we actually kind of call it midolescence around here because similar things are happening to humans as they hit those ages between about 40 and 60. And so just like your body changed a bunch during adolescence and your hormones were doing weird things and your whole identity was shifting, the exact same stuff is happening at midlife. But midlife isn't studied. It's the least studied phase of human development. And so people are confused by it. And of course, our culture doesn't talk about it in a very intelligent way. It's not very studied. And so people are kind of suffering in silence. But here's the thing. There are 42 million American women between the ages of 40 to 60 right now. So there are a lot of people going through this same stage of human development. The way I like to think about it is that you have two mountains in your life. And this is an idea that a guy named David Brooks wrote in a book called The Second Mountain. It's kind of based on the work of Carl Jung, but the first mountain in your life is all about who you are in the world and your construct or your ego, so to speak. And, where you got educated, where you live, what your culture's like, how you raised your kids, what your kind of identity is, who you are in the world. That's your first mountain. But most people get to the top of that first mountain, and either they get knocked off it, or they wander off it, or kind of slide down the hill or walk down it. And then most people wind up in the valley. And that valley is midlife. And what most people don't know, and the people who suffer the most in midlife, is they keep looking backwards to the first mountain, like, oh, my life was so great then, and now my life is over. But what they don't know is there's a whole second mountain to climb. And that second mountain is about your purpose. What are you doing here? What are you for? What's your life for? What do you want to create with your life? That's what your second mountain is about. That is what happens post midlife. And when you think about it that way, the midlife dip, or the valley in between the two mountains, is not a place to suffer through necessarily, even though it can be hard, but it's a place to equip yourself like a base camp for the second climb. What things do you need to take with you, and what things do you need to drop? Of course, the way we talk about midlife in our culture is dumb. Oh, would you like an extra side of crazy to go with that midlife crisis? The way our culture treats a midlife shift, we don't use the word crisis around here, but the way our culture treats it is it's something to be medicated, that there's certainly always a commercial solution to your problem, or perhaps you should just try to recapture your fading youth with Botox and going to the gym and all the things or whatever. A bunch of dumb pharmaceutical or commercial remedies to something that's not even a problem. And so I'm interested in having a different conversation about midlife and what it means and what an incredible opportunity it is. Not that it's just something to be suffered through. So here are 10 symptoms of midlife shift, and you might be going through any or all of these. So it's really common at midlife, and it's kind of this somewhere between 40 and 60, and it might last 6 months, it might last 3 years, I don't know, but there's this feeling that you're kind of frustrated or apathetic, find yourself being a little jealous of other people. Like the weight gain, you feel hot, irritable, and foggy, right? Oh Lord. All of the stuff that comes with perimenopause and menopause. We even talk about that in an incorrect way. Perimenopause is all the time around menopause, which is defined as the year after your period ends. Perimenopause is the part that's making everybody crazy. It's the stuff that's leading up to it, the hot flashes, the fogginess, the irritability, that kind of thing. People don't even know that. I'm saying a little bit stuck here. There we go. Got some catastrophic thinking, maybe. That's not uncommon. All of a sudden, you don't even trust the way you think about things. What about new physical aches and pains? How many of you had that? Oof. A lot of you are asking the big questions, like, what am I doing here? What is my life for? Yeah, those are perfect midlife dip questions because you're prepping for your second climb on your second mountain, of course. But maybe those questions you're having a little trouble answering them and you feel anxious and fearful about it. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe your relationships are shifting. For some of you, your kids have moved out and gone off to college and starting lives of their own, or maybe you've just gotten divorced, or things are just changing. Things that maybe worked on the first mountain are not going to work on the second. Or maybe you have a dim view of the future. What about this? Feeling old and bored. Find yourself talking about your physical symptoms like, oh, I'm just getting old or whatever. Remember, you believe more of what you hear yourself say than anything anybody ever says to you. So here's what's happening when you're going through a midlife dip. You're not crazy. You're deconstructing. You're deconstructing your life in order so that you can build something new. And I know it's cliche, but it's cliche with good reason. Like the caterpillar has to dissolve into goo before becoming a butterfly. You should Google that process sometime. It is super interesting how that all works. It's glorious, actually, but it's probably not a whole lot of fun for the caterpillar. But what we know for sure is the strategies, the stories, and the way you have been from your first mountain, they're just exhausted. Those tools that just don't really work anymore. And midlife is a time to gather new tools and new vision for your life. Also, this is part of the better conversation. Midlife can be disruptive and painful, but ignoring it is way worse. People avoid the invitation all the time. They avoid the invitation to the cocoon. So they start medicating things, with pharmaceuticals or, wine or shopping or, cheating on their spouse or blowing up their relationships or whatever. Like people will like to run from pain, but I want to say that sometimes the pain of midlife can be super useful. It can drive you into something more interesting if you're willing to sit with it. Lots of people get stuck there. They get stuck in the valley because they only know about the second mountain and they stop creating. But oh my gosh, grab onto this, guys. Creating things is where your purpose and your passion lives. God is a great creator, or however you conceive of the divine, intelligent mind behind all of these things that we live in every day that we can't even understand. The great creator, you're made in that image. Therefore, you're made to create. So my question is, what do you want to create? That takes us into midlife key number 2. You don't discover your purpose. You build it. So you hear people say this all the time, especially to me, like, oh, I just need to discover my purpose. I just got to discover it. I used to say it, in fact, in my earlier days. I don't say it anymore because what I realized is you don't discover it as much as you build it. And there is no magic pill. I wish there was. If there was, oh my goodness, I would sell it, right? Because your purpose doesn't exist outside of you in a book or a coach or a flash of inspiration. It's inherent. You were born with it. And around here, we have people of all different kinds of faiths, but I happen to be a Jesus gal. So I believe the Apostle Paul when he said that we are God's handiwork, created for good works in Christ Jesus before the foundation of the earth. So we would walk in them. That gives me a great deal of comfort to know that I'm not just making all this up. Like there is something I'm supposed to do here, maybe several somethings. You build your purpose over time by bravely following your innate curiosity about those things that are inside of you, those things that are interesting, or those little nudges, or something that you feel kind of pulled to. That stuff is really important, but most of us ignore it, right? So, but you stop ignoring it and you actually start to kind of follow your nose with bravery and curiosity. You start to create interesting, purposeful experiences, right? Careers start to develop, jobs change, relationships, all sorts of different stuff comes into your orbit just because you're following your own innate curiosity, the things that God built you with, that your creator made you with, that you're supposed to chase down. It's all in there. We'd like to help you get it out. So here's a couple questions that you might want to answer. I ask my clients these questions all the time, just to see if they already know some things that they have forgotten that they know. Hold on, let me just check the, okay, we got a little bit something going on in the chat. I'll check that in a second. So here's some questions. You guys have a pen and a piece of paper? It's really handy to jot down the answers to these. So first question that I want to ask you is, when you're scrolling, who makes you jealous and what are they doing? Now, you may be taking the high road here and be like, A, I don't scroll, and B, I don't get jealous, but you kind of get the point, right? If you're doing something else and you see somebody doing something, you're like, oh, you have that little feeling. Pay attention to that feeling. What are they doing? Conversely, when somebody's doing something you admire, what are they doing? Write those answers down, just right off the top of your head. Don't overthink it. Secondly, what did you love as a kid that you're perhaps ignoring as an adult? What did you really love as a kid? It's a super good sign that that thing was kind of important to you. It was sort of baked into your DNA. What makes you compassionately angry? Like, I am so bonkers about environmental preservation and protection right now. I get so angry in a compassionate way that I know that this is important to me. It drives me. Like, sometimes we want to ignore that because anger feels like a negative emotion. We could talk about that for a week. That's a different training, but it's not a negative emotion. It's a signpost. Like, hey, pay attention to this. This is important to you. Finally, when you're in the zone, what are you doing? You know what I mean by the zone? That thing that you could just sit down and do forever. What are you doing? Dun, dun, dun. These are the signs you've been looking for. Right? When so many people say, well, I'm just waiting for a sign, just looking for a sign. I'm like, no, go looking for your signs, be deliberate about it. Ask yourself some of these kind of meaningful questions and then go follow your curiosity on the answers because they are signposts. It's a lot of the kind of work we do around here. So, but to follow your curiosity takes a lot of courage. And I can always show you the way, but only you know if you'll start walking in it. And that's a question of courage, isn't it? Maybe you've been thinking about doing something for a really long time, but you're afraid to fail. And you don't know what to do about that. Well, what I can tell you is that it's going to take courage. Anything that new that you try or anything that feels a little bit sketchy, it's going to take courage from you to start walking it out. But deciding what you want and admitting it, even if it feels selfish at first, is the path forward, right? Some of you need to find your voices again and claim your power back. Like, hold on a second. The world doesn't revolve around me, but I am on it. What do I want here? That might feel like such a radical move and such a selfish thing, but hold on a second. If it's not your responsibility to decide what you want from your life, whose responsibility is it? Your boss? Your spouse? Your partner? Your kids? Are they all responsible for deciding what you really want from your life? Heck no. Heck no. That's why it's not selfish. The reward for doing this work is the person you get to become, which is someone of courage, someone of confidence, and someone of impact. Like, just by doing this work, you wind up becoming a person that is like maybe even a role model for someone you don't even know. There's always someone watching you. Everybody, every single one of you is a leader in some way. Every encounter that you're in, you are leading somebody. What direction are you leading them? Your energy will decide that. What direction you're leading the people who are around you. So what if you are living as a person of courage and confidence? You're going to have an incredible impact on the people around you. So here's our approach to purpose around here. It's very simple. And I kind of figured this framework out recently. And I added a new piece, and I think it's really important. So very simply, our first step is we got to help you get unstuck. We got to figure out what the old stories are that you're telling yourself. What are your old standards, some old behaviors, some habits that aren't helping you? You know, maybe you got a really serious Netflix habit that is you're using to avoid or using to numb out. You know, you're on season 6 of Game of Thrones or whatever, and you only started it 2 weeks ago. That might be worth taking a look at. What are you avoiding? What are you numbing? And I love Netflix, right? Like I do the same, but Netflix can be a numbing behavior. So you got a fire that's in you. There might just be a bunch of garbage built up around it. So we got to take some of that garbage away and pull that off. Then the second question is, let's get you clear on some of those questions. What is it, that little flame that's burning in you? What are some of those things that you're curious about, or that you would like, oh man, if this happened in my life, it'd be so amazing. I'd be so thrilled. What are those things? The third piece, and this is the one that we've recently added, is this into joy piece. I'm going to talk about that for a minute because joy is a critical part of this process. I'm convinced of it now. And then once you have those 3 things working, you can't help but impact the people around you, your community, your family, your neighborhood, you know, maybe some cause that you care about. You will bring incredible impact to that system. So let's talk for a second about getting unstuck. First of all, there might be some stuff you need to admit to, such as where your mind is trashy. If our mind is a garden, and it is, what are you allowing to grow there? Is it full of weeds, rocks? Is the soil not been worked up? Is it not been fertilized? Is it dry as a bone? What's going on in your mind up there? Where is your mind trashy? What is going on up in your head? Where are you medicating? And I mean, we can even talk about Netflix, right? That counts. Anything that you're doing to numb a problem so you can avoid it could be called medicating. Who are you blaming? Is it someone else's fault that your life isn't working the way you want it to? Who are you blaming? What are you afraid of? That's a good question. What happened to you? Some of you have unresolved trauma that you're not talking about, just kind of shoved down in the basement. It doesn't go away though. What won't you forgive? Kind of unforgiveness or bitterness are you carrying around with you? You see, midlife is calling you to become something else. But first, you get to confront the old ways and make some new choices. Let me say this really quickly, because I think this is a really important piece of the puzzle. There's a difference between your job and your purpose. They're not necessarily the same thing. Okay. Now, lots of people, I hear people say all the time, I want a job that provides me deep meaning and purpose and also gives me cash and awesome benefits. And if you have that, that's great. Hurrah. Like, well done. That's so great. But they don't necessarily have to be the same thing. Sometimes your job's job is simply to put gas in your car to drive you to your deep meaning and purpose. It's not your job's job to make you happy. Okay. Sometimes your job's job is simply just to pay you for doing a great job at something. And so in your free time, you can go chase down whatever this thing is that's burning inside of you. They don't necessarily have to be the same thing. Sometimes they are. In my case, they are. And lucky me, right? And sometimes some of the fire girls have created lives and jobs that have deep meaning and purpose and cash. That's great. But I just want to release you from that prison in case you're stuck in it. Like you're never, ever satisfied with your job because it's not providing a deep meaning and purpose. Well, let me suggest that it's possible to go find your deep meaning and purpose elsewhere and let your job just be your job. Because here's how we really define purpose around here. Your purpose is, in fact, a set of emotional states you want to feel. So think about the goals that you set, and you think, oh, well, my goal is to write a book. But that's not really your goal. Your goal is actually to feel the emotions you would feel after having written a book. Well, I feel really proud, I feel really accomplished. That's the goal. feeling proud and accomplished, love, joy, contentment, success, power, whatever it is. You ever heard anybody say that before? That's super freeing, because you can start feeling proud and accomplished right now, whether you ever write a book or not. Super freeing. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Let's say you want to be a firefighter. Why do you want to do that? Well, I want to feel proud, brave, and helpful. Your purpose is to feel proud, brave, and helpful. And firefighting is one vehicle you can use to get there. Does that make sense? Do you kind of see the difference between job and purpose? I hope so. So speaking of bravery, let's talk about that for 1 second. I'm just going to check the chat. Whoops. I'm just going to check the chat just for 1 sec, because you guys are chatting it up in there. I don't want to miss anything. Let's see if there's any questions. Yeah, so nice. Education was the career I thought as a child. I pursued it, found another career where we're going to become an educator. Love to read, not a television person, but I do like movies. Yeah, I do too. Yep. Okay, good. Sounds good. Just checking the chat, making sure we're good. All right, so speaking of bravery, that's midlife key number 3. Fear is absolutely part of the process. It's absolutely, if you are going to do something with your life that is meaningful, that's powerful, it's going to scare the pants off of you. And that's okay. That's normal. But we've become, especially in our culture, so afraid to fail because we've been capable of inoculating ourselves, or at least mitigating failure in such a way, preventing it, protecting ourselves from it, insuring ourselves against it, that kind of thing. We've almost forgotten how to do it. And what I want to share with you is that courage is not a gift that we're given. It's a muscle that we build. And it only grows through resistance, in the exact same way that your biceps grow through resistance at the gym, lifting dumbbells. So your courage is going to grow every time you confront your fear of failure. You will become slightly less afraid of failing, and your courage grows and your courage gets stronger and you become braver, right? But most of us, what we like to do is avoid any possibility of failing because we're so afraid of it. So many of you have heard me tell the story about Sarah Blakely, when she talks about her dad, when she, every night at the dinner table, would ask her and her brother what they failed at today. It's like he taught them not to be afraid of failure because it is part of the process. But we've gotten really far away from that. So I want you guys to remember that courage is not a gift we're given. It's a muscle that we build. And it's also true that your comfort zone might be killing you. Think about that for a second. You're so safe and everything's so easy and it's so simple and it's so unchallenging that you're dying inside there. I'm not saying that's happening for all of you, but it might be happening for some of you. Here's what we believe about failure. And I'm doing air quotes. You can't see me right now, but I am. As long as you learn and adapt from something that happens to you, it's not a failure. It's an unexpected outcome. And it's often painful, but it's rarely fatal. It might be humiliating. It might be terrifying. You may feel awful about it, but as long as you learn and adapt and keep going, it's not failure. Midlife is kind of the same. It can be scary to let go of the things from your first mountain and to start climbing a mountain you don't know anything about. That's going to take a lot of investigation and trust and faith and strength and all those things. But what we know is when you start telling the truth about who you are and what you want, all your unresolved issues, your survival patterns, your attachments, your unhealed trauma come roaring to the surface. That's also maybe happening to you at midlife. But that's resistance. And what that resistance does, it builds your courage and resilience muscles, which you're going to need those muscles to withstand the challenges your purpose will present you. I think my dog's barking outside. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, don't you love live stuff? I do. So those things are actually, as you work them out, you're going to get stronger. And they're going to give you muscles that you're going to need to pursue whatever it is you're climbing towards on your second mountain. Make sense? All right. So also, people do want to avoid it if they can. People avoid midlife if they can, because what if my future requires a skill set that I don't have, such as managing my mind and energy, or confronting trauma patterns, or managing anxiety, or setting boundaries, or upsetting the apple cart, or dealing with fear, or engaging conflict, or telling truth in the relationships. None of that stuff happens in your comfort zone. None of it. So remember what I said at the beginning, like the reward for this work is a person that you get to become. You're becoming somebody new in the exact same way The caterpillar is becoming a butterfly. That's midlife. So here's the old approach to fear. I just want to go through this quickly. This is how we kind of were taught to deal with fear. Just suck it up, buttercup. Don't be afraid. It's fine. Jump off that high dive, whatever, suck it up. Or stop being irrational. There's nothing scary about this. It doesn't matter if somebody else thinks it's scary. You do. Or just shove it down and ignore it. Pretend it's not there. How many of you done that? What about getting paralyzed by it and quitting? Maybe that one's resonating for you. Or never starting to begin with because you're so afraid. That's the old approach to fear. What about latching onto a new shiny object? You ever done that one? You're like, I'm starting to get scared of this thing I'm working on right now. I should shift into something completely different. Right? That's a super common one. So here's our approach to fear. And we think this works better. We treat fear like it's data, not an enemy. And we ask questions of it like, fear, what are you trying to tell me here? Like, what is it that I actually need to know? And it might be something like, well, what you're doing is new. What you're doing is worthwhile. Or maybe something needs more attention. On page 3 of that speech, you've got a janky part. Go back and look at that. That's nice. It's data that you need to know, right? How about this? What you're doing is necessary and it serves other people. Holy smokes. What you're doing is necessary and it serves other people. Don't think for 1 second that there isn't a battle going on in the high and heavenly places. There is. There is a battle going on. And so you think that you're going to do something that helps people and, makes their lives better, and the enemy's just going to roll out the red carpet, make that easy for you? Come on now. That's not the way that works. Don't forget that fear keeps us alive and safe, right? Our brains evolved to take a dim view of the world and the things that were happening in it so that our ancestors would have survived long enough to pass on their genes. That's your brain's job, right? Woo, this is scary. Don't do that. Get back in your comfort zone. But it also keeps us small. And at midlife, some of you will get very tired of being small. You're sick of it. You don't want to do it anymore. Okay, cool. It's helpful also to recognize that sometimes the fear that you're feeling might be your nervous system. And it's recognizing a threat, perhaps even an old one that you made rules for. It can be a sign of unhealed trauma, like, that happened to me once before and it didn't go well. And so we don't do those things in the future, ever. We don't ever speak in public, ever. Right? That could be your nervous system, a sign of unhealed trauma. Like some younger part of you is triggered and feels unsafe and unheard. Good to know, right? So let's talk about trauma just for a second. Since I talk about the word all the time, I'm not a therapist, just want to say that. But I also believe that trauma exists on a spectrum and everyone has it. So on one side of the spectrum, you've got big T trauma, and the other side of the spectrum, you've got little t trauma. So big T trauma might be something like sexual trauma or combat trauma or something like that. And little t trauma might be something like high school. Like, do you ever get stuffed into a garbage can in high school? You get bullied? Whatever. That's traumatic. Okay, so another way to think of it is like over here at big T, you've got a bonfire, and over here at little t, you've got a burning match. They vary in size, but if you stick your hand in either of them, they'll both burn you. That's why we talk about trauma. So we tend to make up stories about why we keep getting tripped up and why we can't live on purpose and why nothing that we're doing is working or whatever. And usually those stories are kind of mean and also incorrect. So it's important to challenge those stories. So what do I do about it? Oof, what do I do about it, right? You're like, yeah, that sounds like me. First of all, if you have the sense that there's some younger part of you that's being triggered by what it is you're considering in your second climb, be compassionate to yourself. Be kind to yourself like you would a frightened child. Maybe investigate with them what's going on. Hey, what's really going on here? Well, I'm super scared to give this speech because I had people heckle me before. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Maybe give those parts of you a seat at the table and hear them out regularly. Like find out what's really going on. It's sometimes called inner child work or internal family systems. And whatever they ask for, give it to them. They need a hug, a back rub, some assurance, comfort, like whatever it is. Go back to page 3 and tighten up that speech, whatever it is. There's just a couple things you can do about them. You might want to jot those down. Give me a second. And that takes us to midlife key number 4. Joy is absolutely part of the process too. Just as much as fear is, joy is too. And this is the stuff that I'm really excited about. Ooh, I'm so excited about this. So how do we choose joy? Let's talk about this. First of all, something I want to share with you guys is that I believe from my studies, my own research, my own experience with this, that joy is both a noun and a verb. So we want the state of joy, which is the noun. That feels amazing, doesn't it? Feels so good to just be in a state of joy. But the verb joy is usually rejoice. You see that all over the scriptures. Rejoice, rejoice, rejoice. And what I discovered is that the act of rejoicing, the verb, helps put us in the state of joy, the noun. And it's part of living on purpose, both being in the state of joy and choosing to rejoice. So joy is both a state we want to feel, but also a choice we make to help us into the state that we want to feel. And in fact, it's the purpose of living on purpose, because living with joy and passion actually feels good. But how do I choose joy when things aren't going my way? If you ask 10 people on the street, they would all tell you, maybe not all of them, maybe 90% of them would say, well, that can't be done. It's impossible. How can you be expected to be joyful when things are going badly? How many of you saw that gal Nightbird on America's Got Talent? She got up there and sang the song that she wrote and kind of blew everyone away. And also in the meantime, let it drop that she was dying of cancer. And she said something so beautiful. She said, I just need people to know that I'm so much more than the bad things that happen to me, and not to wait for everything to be good to be happy. I mean, like you just could hear the silence when she said this. And so we know that it is possible to choose joy or to choose contentment or to rejoice in suffering, because the scriptures all say, even though all these bad things are happening to you, rejoice in the Lord anyway. Pray continually, be patient in affliction, and rejoice, rejoice, rejoice. Now, for me, what that looks like is being grateful, is gratitude. Okay, gratitude is the portal to rejoicing. It is the portal to joy. Because if I'm having a really crummy day or something's going south for me, if I will start deliberately thanking God, being grateful for the things that are amazing in my life. Oh my gosh, it's only 75 degrees today in Pensacola. The sun is out. The birds are back and they're singing. It's almost like fall is coming, and my legs work and I can see, and I have running water and I have clean water and a roof over my head, and all the things. The next thing that I feel is the noun, the state of joy. But it is choice. It is a choice. So when something is going wrong for you, a great question to ask yourself is, what am I making this mean? What am I making this mean? Am I choosing to take the dimmest possible view of the situation and assuming there's absolutely nothing that I could be thankful for or rejoice in? That would be kind of a common human behavior. But around here, we don't act commonly. We do things differently. What am I making this mean? And how true is that? What else might be true? I tell my clients all the time, listen, we're all making this up anyway. We're all writing the story as we go along. So what story do you want to write? Why not pick one that you like? Oh my gosh, this thing that I did didn't work out. I'm such a loser. I'm a failure. I'm an idiot, blah, blah, blah. So just to be clear, you did something and didn't work out like you expected. Therefore, you're a loser and a failure and an idiot. How true is that? What else might be true? And then also, when things are really rough, and I don't want to diminish anybody that things are difficult. Things are incredibly difficult. There's so many difficult things going on. Do you want to add to your suffering by calling yourself an idiot and make it more difficult? Probably not. So a better question to ask is, what's the gift in this? Even during COVID, you heard people say all the time, well, this COVID thing is horrendous, and it's terrible. And all these terrible things are happening. And I spent more time with my kids. I got to know my kids in a completely different way. And that was kind of a good thing that came out of it. Nobody's saying that's not going to be hard. Life is going to do what it's going to do. In this life, you will have trouble. Also translated in the Greek as pressure. In this life, you will have pressure. But cheer up, Jesus said, I've overcome the world. Right? So what's the gift in this? Get used to asking yourself that question and see what happens. So this is all mindset work, guys. All of it, every bit of it. And what we do with our clients is we get them as clear as they possibly can be on some compelling vision for their lives in the next 12 months. What do you really want to create in the next 12 months? Not the next 5 years, that's too far out. Next 12 months, what would make you jump for joy? What would make you be over the moon if you managed to accomplish it? Get clear on that. And then we rip out any weeds that are growing up in that garden. And we plant joy there instead. We rip those weeds out because those weeds, oh, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not capable, I'm scared, I'm a fraud, I'm a fake, all the things that we say, those are weeds and they got to go. And once you rip them out, you can plant joy there instead, and it makes you feel better. Every day we connect with that vision, we feel it and visualize it. And this is how you make it come to life. See it over and over and over again. But here's the thing, mindset's only about 25% of the process. Here's some other things that we need to take a look at. Mindset's so important, but it's about 25% of it. So what's going on in your physical world? It's really hard to stay focused on your purpose when your body feels bad. Are you sleeping? Are you drinking enough water? You getting outside? You standing? Stretching out your body, exercising your body, eating food that fuels you? Or are you eating garbage? You're not a brain in a jar. Like you're not going to be able to outperform the physical condition of your body. You can force it for a long time and eventually it's going to say no, right? So let's get that, right? Let's just attend to our physical world. Margaret's here. She's a yoga teacher. She's fabulous. Does a great job of taking care of her physical body and loving her physical body as a form of self-care. But it's like, is that an option? You can't be chasing down your purpose if you feel terrible all the time, okay? Second thing is your emotional world. What about that unresolved trauma or unforgiveness or bitterness or victimhood? What are you carrying around? What kind of baggage are you carrying around? And what do you want to do about that? And then finally, the other piece is the spiritual world. Okay, who put you here and what for? Because those are the questions that people ask themselves at midlife. What am I doing here? What is my life for? What's the purpose of being human? Those questions are really tough to answer if you don't have a devotional grid outside humanity. If there's not something bigger than this, these questions are tough to answer. What about all the stuff we can't explain? Where do you go when life is too big and scary for you? What do you rely on? What kind of faith do you have? Super important. So again, our approach to getting on purpose, right? At midlife or really any other time, is get you unstuck, get you to clarify that vision in the next 12 months and connect with it, following your curiosity, following the things that are interesting to you, that make your heart beat fast, that other people are doing, that's exciting to you, adding joy into the process, choosing joy even on the days when things are difficult, and then watch what happens. And that's your impact. What would it be like if you were impacting your kids or your community or your marriage or people at work, your company? Maybe you're leading a company. You're always leading somebody. What kind of impact are you having? And what impact would you like to have? So just for example, here's how some impact looks around here. We've got people leaving their jobs that no longer fit them. It's actually become a bit of a joke how many people quit their jobs in my orbit. People planning international adventures, starting or restarting businesses, restoring their marriages, quitting drinking, going back to school, serving their communities, or building programs of their own. And what's beautiful is they've finally gotten clear on what they want and they're confidently striding toward it. It's great. Let me give you an example. This is Angela. She's absolutely as much fun as she looks like. And when we met, she was really stymied. She was just stuck with a lot of anxiety and a lot of perfectionism, and she couldn't move forward. She had a really big idea of something that she wanted to work on, a business that was going to, help people with organization and design. But she was stuck. Everything had to be perfect. She had to get an A+ and everything. And anybody who started a business will tell you that's impossible. Actually, perfectionism is impossible everywhere, right? So we got to do some work together, and she's actually started that business and in fact picked up a few clients, and she's so in her zone and it's so fun to watch. And this is what she had to say about working with us. The Meaning of Midlife Academy not only helped me discover the beauty and purpose of my life, but equipped me with valuable tools and resources and connections I'll have with me the rest of my life. I gained so much more than I ever could have dreamt of. That makes me super excited. Here's another one. Meet Davy. Davy quit her job about 6 weeks ago, retrofitted a Ford cargo van into a little rolling personal motorhome, basically, and she's driving around the country. And the whole reason that she's doing it is she's really interested in intentional communities that are built around dinner tables. All she wants to do is meet people around dinner tables and hear their stories and talk with them and make people feel loved and welcome. Isn't that beautiful? And she doesn't know how that's all going to work out, but you know what? She's diving in and doing it. She's following her curiosity and doing this really brave thing. This is what she has to say about our work together. How do I summarize what our time together has meant to me? This testimony doesn't even begin to touch it, nor does saying thank you. It doesn't seem like enough. I'm so thankful that you've been there to walk through this time of change with me. It's been challenging and fun. I love being a part of the 5-Girl Army. So guys, here's the thing. It's not magic. It's work that feels a little bit magical. And your time's going to pass anyway. It's going to be 3 years from now in 3 years. It's going to be 6 months from now in 6 months. Christmas is going to be here before we know it, right? What do you want to do with your time? What are you waiting for? And that takes us to midlife key number 5. You need a squad. Here's what we know for sure. Loneliness is the dark side of our culture's love of independence, self-sufficiency, and privacy. Other cultures value the opposite things like community, interdependence, and sharing, and closeness, right? Those cultures struggle less with loneliness than we do. So loneliness is a dark side. It has a cost. 40% of US adults over 40 say they're lonely, and 50% say they don't have a single friend they can confide in. And you know why I think that is? I think it's because there's loneliness. Admitting you're lonely is attached to shame. People feel ashamed of admitting that they don't have a single friend that they could confide in. So if you ask somebody, how you doing? How many of them are ever going to say, well, I'm lonely? No, they're going to say, I'm busy. Busy? Oh, super busy, right? Like there's some stigma attached to loneliness, but so many people, so many of us, half of us effectively feel it. All right, good to know. And COVID, made our loneliness and isolation problem 1,000 times worse. We know this, right? Here's the problem with it though. Loneliness can shorten your lifespan by 15 years. It's equivalent in impact to obesity and smoking, recent studies say. Yikes. So we got to do something about that. Community, squad, team, it's critically important. Also, that hyperachieving, I'm fine, I got this, perfectionist thing, that is going to hold you back or burn you out, maybe both. And it's pretty lonely as well, because you can't ever let them see you sweat, right? Anybody remember that advertising thing from the Secret person in the 80s? Never let them see you sweat, like when women were first kind of muscling their way into the boardroom. That hyperachieving thing, right? We actually need each other. Incidentally, millennials and Gen Z identify as the loneliest demographic. 54% of them say nobody knows them well. Wow, given what we know, wonder how we got that way. Wonder what device that millennials and Gen Z grew up with that maybe my generation didn't. Now, listen, I'm not throwing shade on anybody. I use this thing as much as anybody else does, but there's a cost. It'd be a good idea if we started recognizing it and start bringing some things back, like what we do around here, we call it love dinner, and making sure that you're building squad and building tribe. Who's your squad? Who's your tribe? And also, frankly, if you could have done all this on your own, you'd have done it by now and you wouldn't be stuck. We can't see our own blind spots. That's why they're called blind spots. We can't see our survival patterns, the way we're rationalizing things, etc. That takes a neutral observer standing on the outside of your life. And who's asking you the hard questions and guiding you and highlighting your wins and cheering you on. My purpose, incidentally, is helping you get into yours. I have about 2,000 plus hours of helping women do just that. As a company, our greatest joy is watching women catch fire as they clarify their purpose and start walking it out with courage and diligence and excitement. It's so much fun to watch. We celebrate women around here. How many people in your life do you have celebrating, cheering you on, supporting you? I love this proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. And if you want to go far, go together. So, question is, who's your coach and where's your squad? Are you thinking about it right now? Are you figuring it out? So today I promise to show you guys a couple of things. First of all, I promise to show you why you're not crazy. and why midlife is the natural time to grow into something new, and how to stop looking for a magic pill because it doesn't exist to fix that midlife malaise, and what you can do instead, and why you'll never get over fear of failure and unworthiness and rejection as much as you will feel, understand, and utilize it. I also promise to show you how critical a good mindset is during your midlife shift, but why it's only one of 4 critical pieces, and how our framework helps clients get unstuck on purpose and back into joy so they can impact the world around them, and how our culture's love of privacy and individualism is killing us and what we need now more than ever. So guys, all you got to do is remember these 5 things. All right. So remember that midlife shift is normal. You're normal. You're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You don't discover purpose as much as you build it. Keep that one in mind. Start gathering those little signs. Start following your innate curiosity. Yeah, and you're going to get afraid. That's normal. Fear is just part of the process. Start embracing it. Start loving it. Start thinking about failing, right? Joy is part of the process too. That's another choice that we can make, to choose to embrace that. And finally, you need a squad. We all do. I do, you do, every one of us does. You need a squad. So here's the thing. You've got a choice. You always have a choice. You can continue kind of buying self-help books and going to conferences and making solemn vows to yourself and breaking them and then beating yourself up for them. You can keep kind of waiting for a sign. You can keep watching years tick by, trying to make the strategies from the first half of your life work in the second and wondering why they don't. You can even keep blaming people in your environment for your malaise and medicating with Netflix or wine or shopping or overworking. How many of you guys are doing that? Right? Just getting busier and busier. Or you can take a leap and do something different. You can get crystal clear on what you want from the second half of your life and muster the courage to go after it. You can confront the fear in the old stories and haul off that mind trash that's keeping you stuck in not enoughness, imposter syndrome, fear, lack of confidence, all of those things. Maybe you can even feel joy and passion again and watch your new purpose bring light and joy to the people around you. Maybe you can start feeling proud of your accomplishments again as you do interesting things with your life and pay it forward to your community and the world. And if that's what you want to do, here's how I can help. I've set aside time in the next 48 hours where I can speak with you about how you can apply these ideas to your life starting today. I've coached hundreds of people. And whatever your specific challenge is, I've seen it and I know how to address it. And I can work with you to craft a step-by-step plan so you can stop settling and start living a life you love on fire and on purpose. And the cost of this chat with me or my team is absolutely free. However, you must be a doer. You've got to be ready to invest your time and your energy and your money into changing your life, because the time is going to pass. And the question is, how are you going to pass it? You've got to be open to new ideas and new people, and you got to be coachable. If you already know everything or you're rigid in your thinking, I can tell you right now, like, we're just not fit. People ask me all the time, why do I do this? What's my why? That's a great question to ask yourself too. What's your why? Behind maybe some of those things that you wrote down, what's your why? Why do you want to do this? Well, here's mine. I'm building an army of women who are ready to make Earth look more like heaven. And they got to do their work to do that. Whatever it is that got put inside of them, that little flame that's burning inside of you, what is that thing? We need to get that out in the world. So whatever it is, it's important to you. And I want to help be part of you, bring it to fruition. Also, I help women get unstuck and on purpose every day. So if we get on the phone and we like each other, maybe we can partner up and help you start building your happy second half. So if that sounds like a good thing to do, you can pop over to girlcatchfire.com/chat and book a call with me. It's about an hour. And it's going to be the best hour the best hour that you've spent in a very long time talking about nothing but yourself and where you are and where you've been and where you want to go. And if I can help you get there, I will tell you and show you exactly how. And if I can't, I'll tell you that as well. The call is free and you might wind up with me or you might wind up with a member of my team. But either way, you're going to get a ton of clarity from the call. So girlcatchfire.com/chat. What's going to happen is you'll get taken over to my scheduler. And you can just pick a time that works for you. Give yourself a gift of like an hour to just be still, be quiet, and just to have a really deep, intense talk. And then you're going to get taken over to a little form that just gives us some background on who you are and what you got going on. Fill that out. It helps us.